Okay. So this is chapter 15, and we said we're going to learn this. Unfortunately, over the last few days, we've lost a lot of people who are in Miluim, which is reserves, and Lebanon. And unfortunately, many of them have very many children. Are someone, the father of kids in my daughter's high school class, father of 6. We lost a father of 8 today, who I didn't know personally, but again, circles within circles. My son's yeshiva, he's a high school teacher in Jerusalem, father of 8. Yeah, your friends and your friend's son, 28. And we've lost also young people, but I wanted to just dedicate today's learning to all the orphans. And just remember that the work that we're doing every day on ourselves is holy work. And whether it's in how you're practicing these character traits in relationships with other people, in the relationship between you and God, in the relationship with yourself, which includes your health, your body, your food, that these are all interweaving circles. And I heard something incredibly beautiful over this period of time. I can't remember if it was Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, somewhere in between. And it was this very interesting experience. It was talking about why the Jewish people are so important. Why are we so important? Why are we this chosen people? What does that mean? Obviously, it doesn't mean we're chosen for like some outside greatness or respect, right? That's certainly not the case. What does it mean? It means that the good character traits that are given out to all other nations are given to the Jewish people, that we are a microcosm of the entire universe, which is why we're always fighting and we never agree and we have a million different opinions on one thing, is because we're like, the galaxy in a bottle. And the more that we refine ourselves, it influences and refines the entire universe and all the people and all the nations. And we've seen the belief in one God, how that has spread out and enlightened other people, the belief in human dignity, how that is spread out in other people. And, all of these things came through us, through our maturity, through all of these things. And I pray that through all the tests that we're taking right now, our continual maturity, our continual working on our traits should be a merit to more light coming into the world, and that we win this battle between, good and evil, and that we bring a new time of light. And I just thought that was very inspiring to me to keep doing the work, especially when it's heavy, especially when it's hard, especially when it feels pointless sometimes, because we're each a universe and we're part of a nation that's a mini universe. And when we refine ourselves, we are doing something that matters. We are doing something that matters in a big way and in a small way. Okay. Chapter 15, page 201, and we're continuing in this beautiful discussion of abstinence, kind of retaking this idea of flipping deprivation on its head. The best way to acquire abstinence is to reflect on the insignificance of worldly pleasures and the harm to which they may give rise. What inclines one nature to these pleasures is the seduction of the senses that makes things seem so good and so pleasant. But if one could realize that these are superficial appearances which are deceptive, and that good is illusory and at best transitory, then the harm that they are likely to bring in their wake is real and permanent. He is apt to reject these. And we all know that this is true, right? When we think about that amazing vacation in the most luxurious suite, if you have no health, it has no value. If you have no one to share that with, it has no value. If you're depressed and anxious about your children, it has no value. It's this illusory, temporary fantasy that seduces us. Same thing with food, right? You see commercials and Instagram, or you see something in a bakery or something on the table, and it seems like it's going to offer you this fantasy. But in fact, we know all of the emotional power that all of these foods have over us is completely emotional. It's the emotional greater significance we give to that experience. Because to our senses, there's no difference between a sensual bath sensually making love to someone you've made a lifetime, real spiritual, intimate connection, commitment with, and a beautifully prepared, healthy meal, right? Grounding yourself in meditation, taking a walk in nature, all of these things, whether you're in Thailand or Cancun or Israel or New York State in the fall, really aren't necessarily more pleasurable than the other. It's a seduction of the senses. It's fantasy. And can everyone relate to being pulled into fantasy? Right? And yet, when we're placed in front of us and we see the reality, we're like, yeah, well, vacations end. What decides whether the vacation was good or not? The emotional experiences we had on the vacation, not the scenery. So if only our intelligence would prevail, how different human behavior would be. We watch an infant reach for something that he thinks is pleasant because it's colorful, and he may cry bitterly until he gets it, only to throw it away after a few moments. A small child may wail for ice cream before dinner, and a mother who is totally exhausted from the day's ordeals may throw in the towel and give in to the child, who then does not eat his supper, depriving himself of essential nutrients from optimum growth. We readily recognize such behavior as juvenile, yet intelligent, mature adults often behave no differently. Let's begin with extreme examples. A person has a craving for cocaine, and it goes for its euphoriant properties, rendering himself totally oblivious to the dangers and even lethal effects, his PhD and even phi beta kappa notwithstanding. A less extreme and more common example is a learned scholar who puffs away at cigarettes, ignoring what every school child knows and placing his heart, lungs at the very risk of life for the momentary pleasure of smoking. An even more common example is a person who indulges in foods that are tasty, much to the detriment of his health, increasingly his already excessive weight, aggravating diabetes or high blood pressure. Application of seichel would prevent such self-destructive behavior. But even mature, erudite adults, some of which consider themselves to be spiritual, also behave in such foolish manners, right? We have all fallen prey to the fantasy of the now, right? And somehow our own innate intelligence, right, is out the door. The only conclusion to come to is this seduction of the senses is very overpowering, often totally disarming our intelligence. The Ramchal therefore emphasizes that we must energize and reinforce the seichel, this inner intelligence, and implement in order to recognize the illusory nature of what appears to be pleasant, and to act according to the true, mature understanding of what is real good. Doesn't this flip the idea of being deprived on its head? There is no such thing as deprivation. They're strengthening our clarity of understanding and intelligence of what is real good versus giving into this seduction. And we all know today we have this, everybody feels this seduction. Couldn't the war just end, right? Couldn't there just like magically fairy dust come and I could, right, lose 40 pounds? Couldn't this relationship that really needs work on myself and himself, like just magically be repaired and we'll go on a second honeymoon? Like there's all these stories that we tell ourselves and we all buy into the fantasy. How are we going to strengthen the clarity to know what real good is? Because we are easily seduced. All worldly pleasures are similar to the desire for tasty food. And remember, this is in the 1900s who wrote this, no, 1700s. Okay, food has been an issue for a long time. So if you're like me and you've had food issues, you're in good company. The Ramchal feels your a conflict, okay? All worldly pleasures are similar to the desire for tasty food, in that they give momentary gratification and too often cause distressing illnesses. This was true in the 1700s, it's true today. No thinking person would exchange momentary pleasure for long-lasting distress. All one needs to do is reflect on this, and eventually one would escape from the trap of foolish thinking. But it is for this reason, Solomon says, it is better to go to the house of a mourner than to the house of feasting. Think back for a few moments. How many times have you had a delicious meal or tasty pastries and condiments? How did he know we just finished a 7-day holiday? Oh my goodness. What pleasure did you have from those now? In fact, how much pleasure did you have from them even 2 hours after eating? On the other hand, think of giving tzedakah to a needy family or having provided some help to a person in distress. Even though you may have done this years ago, there's still a good feeling that prevails. Is it not clear that the performance of mitzvot results in good feelings of lasting duration, whereas physical pleasures are one enjoys are neutral, but so many things people do for pleasure have undesirable results, as those we've just noted? The contrast is striking. Engage in mitzvot and you have a good feeling of long duration. But if you indulge in earthly pleasures, you may later regret the distress they cause. Just a rule of thumb, the wise person will maximize performance of mitzvot, minimize indulgence in earthly pleasures. Question, comment. Okay, we're going to keep going and then we're going to discuss. It is indeed pleasant to attend a feast. Food, drink, singing, merrymaking. While all this is enjoyable, one does not generally leave a feast enriched with methods for attaining a more spiritual life. And after a short period of time, even if its memory of this feast has dissipated, there is, of course, a su'udat mitzvah, a feast which celebrates performance of a mitzvah, at which there's a discussion of Torah concepts, which enlighten us on the ways of better living. At the house of the mourner, however, one is confronted with the mortality of man, and one focuses on the relative brevity of the human sojourn on earth. One is more likely to leave with an increased thought to man's permanent existence, the eternal life of the neshama. It is also customary in the house of the mourning to recite Psalm 49, about the futility of investing oneself in earthly goals is impressively described. So while to visit a house of feasting is more enjoyable, to visit a house of mourning is more beneficial. One must be careful that one does not go to extremes. Abstinence, because it usually does not succeed. Rather, one should proceed very gradually in abstinence, bit by bit, adjusting to it till it becomes second nature. And this is super important. You don't hear this and being like, okay, I'm devoting my life to right? Being an aesthetic and not having anything luxurious or sensual in my life. That's not the point here. The point is, the more that we recognize the transitory nature of physical pleasure, the more that we can use it appropriately. Like at a su'udat mitzvah, we had one, my son finished a certain learning and we had a party. Oh, and I tell you, I think I ate like 4 bites at the party and there was delicious food and there were things out, but I was so much enjoying the company and the spirit of the event and watching my son and his friends. And it's super, because he continued learning with my father-in-law, even while he's been in the army. Once a week they learned. And so it took them a long time to finish, but it was even more proud of him that he had made that time even during his service. And it was really special. Not a single person mentioned the food. Every single person mentioned how much it was heartwarming that it happened. And this is, I think, what we're talking about here. Many people who decide on a lifestyle change wish to undergo an instant transformation. The Ramchal correctly points out that radical changes do not succeed. A human being adapts to things gradually, and rapid changes are not readily tolerated. It is amazing that people are persistently unable to get this message, as is evident by those who wish to lose weight and go from one magic diet to another, losing 30 pounds within weeks and regaining that amount or more. They continually persevere in this pattern, each time expecting that this time will be different. Experience has proven that sustained weight control depends on a change in lifestyle, which must come gradually, rather than any sudden magic fashion. A radical change to abstinence is not only poorly tolerated and may result in rebound reaction, it is also likely to become the extreme form of abstinence, which the Ramchal said is very undesirable. No one wants to be around those kind of people who don't know how to enjoy life, right? Like, no thanks. They give being spiritual a bad name. A very gradual relinquishing of things that are non-essential will allow for an adjustment that is both well tolerated and also consistent with the preservation of a healthy diet, productive interpersonal relationships, and constructive community participation, right? There are people who are afraid to go out to eat. They're afraid to participate in community things because, gosh, I'm going to end up eating things and I don't have any self-control, and all stories and narratives and emotional confusion come in their head. So this is the end of the trait of abstinence. So let's open up a little conversation. And through the last few weeks, we've been discussing abstinence. Has anybody noticed anything different in their behavior at all, or even their awareness since we opened up this discussion of abstinence in general? Stacy.
Yeah, definitely. I actually repeated the thing that you said about, okay, so if you take, one cookie during Yontif, or 2 cookies, or even 3 cookies, but you don't take that 4th cookie. And I'm like, yeah, that's the gradual part of it. That's the small, like, oh, that counts. And, I have been eating very well lately. But on Yontif, oh my gosh, we went into this one sukkah hop and she had an entire pan of lemon meringue stuff. I wanted to bury my face into it. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I definitely saw my addiction. I was like, oh yeah, there it goes. I got triggered. So I had one. And then I went into the kitchen and got a second one so that no one from the first room would see that I just got a second one.
Mm-hmm.
That was all I did, but I felt sick afterwards. I hadn't had that much sugar in a really long time, and it was intense. And then I was also at a sukkah eating, and someone brought out these peanut butter, or no, it was, what's that stuff? The lotus butter stuff from Israel. Um, and I had one, and and she had cut them in very narrow little pieces. And I took one and went right for the second one. And somebody who I've known since he was a little kid, he's like, Stacy. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I couldn't even pause. I couldn't even pause. I mean, that's all I did. I did the 2, but those 4 desserts that I ate were intense. That was all I did, but for the most part, for the rest of the time, I ate pretty healthy, but still. And of course, you eat more than you do normally. Yesterday, for lunch, I just had my salad and I was so happy, and my herring, and that was what I had, protein and salad. Great. That was really, I wish I could just eat protein, my herring and salad for the rest of my life. Oh, and then I had a funny dream last night that some lady was showing how rice-a-roni, she was a blogger, and she was making these rice-a-roni little things in her. So obviously this is penetrated my consciousness because I'm dreaming about it now. And she said she put an egg in each one, and then she goes, but I just found out that eggs have sugar. So now I can't eat eggs. So I'm like, anyway, I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying other than my consciousness has definitely been altered since you.
Amazing. Not that we want to be encouraging bad dreams, but that awareness of saying, oh, like, okay, it's interesting. I noticed how I felt. I noticed that I wasn't fully enjoying it because I was already on the next one after I had the first one. And remembering that, like, being triggered around food or over consuming is part, like you said, of human nature. And so it's more increasing that awareness around, oh, that's really interesting. Next time I have something really sweet in front of me, how could I slow down? How could I make that one really, really last? How can I make sure that if I take a second one, I do it in public? I don't go and try to hide it because, like, God's everywhere. And it's really only about me and myself and me and God. It's not about anybody else, right? Like, and like just keep tweaking the mindset, like by 1%, 1%, 1%. And then we become into a different version of ourselves. And then still there are going to be times where we're dysregulated and we sit down to a meal and we eat too fast and we're like, what just happened? How did I consume so many calories in such a short amount of time? And it's just recognizing that had nothing to do with food. That had to do with the me showing up to that meal. So all of these things integrate into what does abstinence mean to us, right? Thinking about the long-term good versus the short-term good. Connie, did you have something to add?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you see me?
yes.
Oh, okay, because I just moved. I'm trying to get back to myself. I don't see myself. Hold on.
Now I don't see you.
Oh, wait a second. But you hear me, but you don't see
Yes,
me?
yes. I hear you, but I don't see you.
Now.
Now I
Okay.
see you.
All right. Okay, I'm hearing everything you're saying and I'm relating to everything you're saying. It makes it's it goes straight into my essence, and I'm living this all the time with the struggle of, yes, I know what I need to do, and but over Yontif I had this same issue. Like when you have it, first of all, with the time, with the eating late, and everything, and then one meal after the next, so I was totally thrown off. um on one hand, I still have it in my consciousness. Yes, I'm aware, I know, but I'm ready to go back on track now. Thank God we're back to a normal routine finally. But yeah, so I ended up gaining a few pounds over Yantif, and but I'm I'm not gonna be hard on myself.
Right.
I'm just gonna keep
Also,
going.
also remember the first 48 hours after the holiday, your body's going to recalibrate salt, water, good night's sleep. 48 hours later, you'll know if you actually gained any real weight over the holiday. Okay. Because,
Uh-huh.
like you said, your entire body clock is off in terms of the time that you're eating at night, the time that you're eating in the day, your water intake. The salt intake in all of the holiday food is always higher. And so, like, really 48 hours of eating well after a Chag. And that's when you can say, okay, net over Chag, maybe I gained a pound, maybe I gained two. So what? You know how to find balance. But at the same time, you might be surprised that it actually comes right down in the first day or two of like having a better flow to your schedule. And so that's also something to take with. Like, don't get like hard on yourself when it first happens. Something else I read, you'll love this, Connie, because you're Chabad. I've been reading this book on Tanya by Chaim Miller about the in-betweeners, and we're all in-betweeners, right? Like, we're all not righteous tzaddikim, we're not evil, we're just like people, right? We're like in-betweeners. And he said something beautiful about the struggle and how something about being an in-betweener is that you're never going to be someone who never struggles. I'm like, I tell my clients this all the time. Like, if you're somebody who has an emotional connection with food, there'll always be an emotional connection with food. It's always a relationship that's going to grow and develop. And you're never just not going to find food at all appealing. And you wouldn't want to freely, right? Like, it's part of your nature is that this is something that's appealing to you. And it talked about how every time we make a good choice, we're actually revealing God's light in the world in some place that's dark, in a place that's very physical. And to me, I find that again, all these kind of things take a lot of diligence and a lot of consistency and a lot of effort. And sometimes they feel effortless because you're in the zone and you're just feeling all the good feels and you're not having the cravings and that. And then sometimes you have a holiday and you're like, wow, that was like a marathon of food. And I did as much good choices as I can, but everything was out of my control. And I don't know. And just remember that every time you're in this issue and you're relating and you're being more aware, and it's something that 90% of people face as they age, food becomes more and more medicine and less recreation over 40 for every human being. That there's a divine reason why we have this challenge. And because food is so physical, when we elevate it by making choices that are thoughtful and intentional, or making a blessing over food, or practicing abstinence in a small way, making a healthy choice, we're elevating that food by having it be absorbed into our bodies and then doing good things. And so when we recognize that, like, I think there's also, it gives it a greater meaning, it gives it a greater value, even in the struggle, even in when right now, everything you ate over the holiday is running through your body, and every single cell of your body is engaged in learning Torah right now for the merit of orphan children. Every single cell of your body is like shooting out God's light from the food that you ate. Like that's pretty amazing when you pause and think about it. So we can integrate this sensual pleasure, but with a higher purpose by moderating it. Shulamit, you have something to add?
Sorry, it takes me a minute always to unmute. Can you hear me? I've got the headphones in. I'm not sure.
I hear you. We hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, it's really weird with the headphones. I can hear my own voice. I'm going to take them out. Give me 1 second. Not headphones. I don't have speaker.
I'm very excited. I'll just give you in our next chapter is purity. And I will talk about that next, but go ahead. Shulamit is back. Shulamit is back.
There we go. Can you hear me now? Does that work?
We hear you.
On. Turning that off. Any good now? Can you hear me?
Yeah. We hear you.
So weird. All right. Well, I'll say what I was thinking. I liked what you said about, just give yourself a chance after Yom Tov to recalibrate and recuperate. For me, my eating and judging and things journey is, the type of inner work that we both do. I feel it lends itself to an understanding that all the judging that we do of ourselves around food is like a second layer of judgment. So first, you're going to do the thing that makes you feel ashamed, right? So whether it's food or something else. Can you all hear me all right? It's a bit noisy.
Yeah.
Here. And then the second thing is that, you're feeling all like guilt and shame around eating it, like you're surreptitiously stuffing your face, hoping nobody sees you. And then when they do, even if they don't, you've got that layer of guilt. So my understanding of the whole thing is, it's like that with everything. The more we accept ourselves in our humanity and knowing that, we like nice food and allowing ourselves to have that nice food, the less, me personally, I think it's the same with other people as well, feel an inclination to really stuff and then have the addiction to it. If we know that there's no lack, I don't have to eat all food now. There's plenty for later. It's all right. Just chill. The same as that beautiful lemon meringue or whatever peanut chocolate thing is there now. I can get more of it tomorrow if I want. There's no rush. Just chill out. Your nervous system affects your digestive system. So my feeling is that a lot of the indigestive disorders that Jews have, specifically IBS and Crohn's and all those things, come from generations of guilt and shame and torture and running away from things and being nervous and having to eat in a hurry and like, quick, let's eat, and then taking a million things on the trip just in case we can't find this and we can't find that and there's no kosher food and all that panic. And it's just about breathing and just letting it, it's just like, just take a minute to just breathe and tune into your body and what your body wants in that moment. So I just had a pizza. Sorry, I was eating it. I hope that's not disrespectful. I was eating it during the class and I had 2 slices and then I tuned in and I was like, yeah, that's enough. So I'm like, I like the pizza, I enjoyed the pizza and I've got no judgment around it. It's just fine. And then the more that I feel comfortable around my choices of food and that I didn't eat more than I needed to, I can take it home and warm it later. But my digestive system doesn't feel bloated after that, even though it was pizza. I'm not a massive fan of white flour, nor is my sensitive digestive system. But the less nervous I am about eating it, the more it's like, yeah, okay, it's all right. It doesn't affect me as much. Don't know if anyone can relate to that, but that's my thinking.
I think that's
about everything,
very true.
and it's the same about food.
I think it's very true because I always tell everybody, like, the same desserts that you're eating or the same pizza you're eating, if you're upset and dysregulated when you're eating it, the result is 200% different than you relax and enjoying it, which is why I said the next time you're in that situation with a sweet, how can I be really present and enjoying it and slow it down and like be with it? Your whole integration of how your body takes in that food is different. And if you've had, an emotional eating episode where you feel like, oh, I was rushed and I grabbed the pizza, not because I wanted pizza, but because I was in a scarcity place. There's not going to be food for 5 hours. What am I going to, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I ate the pizza and I was rushed and now I feel sick. Be compassionate to yourself, right? Go into that self-awareness, go into that place of like, okay, Hashem, I kind of got overwhelmed. This is what happened. Help me out. Like, help
Yeah,
settle
or
me
even,
down.
yeah, I would even go a step further and say, like, it comes from a place of joy. So Hashem gave us these flavors and beautiful fruit and beautiful things for a reason. He wanted us to be joyful and enjoy the flavors. So I really allow myself to be joyful around the food I eat. You know, I was thinking about what you said about will we remember it. Actually, I went to the most spectacular Friday night dinner, and my friend had taken the trouble to prepare a tablescape that looked like it came out of house and garden. There was way more food than any of us needed to eat. And we probably did eat more than we should have normally eaten, but it was just so joyful. It was a joyful experience. And honestly, I will remember that the rest of my life. So I actually think there's a call
But it
for
was
not
the
abstinence.
experience. But I'm going to applaud you there because it was the experience. You just described the tablescape and an abundance and the people and the joy.
It was
You
so
didn't
nice.
tell us about the steak itself. And that's the difference. We know the power of that sensual thing of food. And when we elevate it to experience, it's not about, is it good or is it bad? Like, I'll show you guys. I have my lunch here. This is like, I have yogurt with chia seeds and blueberries and an apple and almond butter and pumpkin spice on top waiting for me. And, you know, I'm going to really enjoy every single flavor and texture and thing there. I don't know that I'll necessarily remember it tomorrow. The same way, like I had lots of yummy food over Chag. Like I had lots of yummy food, and I'll remember it. But quite honestly, that would be so much more enjoyable and meaningful if I end up eating it with my daughter who just came home and we talk about her day and like there's some other context to it. If you ever pay attention or set a timer and see how you eat when you're alone, the amount of physical sensual pleasure that you can get will be finished way before you finish the dish, right? Like if you try to eat what you're eating without a phone, without a book, without a person next to you, and you try to stay present and eat mindfully, the amount of pleasure is limited to like 5 to 7 minutes. After that, we look for distraction to reinvigorate the eating experience so that it's fun again, because it's kind of boring. And so when we recognize that, we recognize why sometimes we rush, why context is so important, and why abstinence, again, should not be taken to an extreme. It should highlight the beauty and power and sensuality of food in general. And it's the same thing in any physical pleasure, right? Whether it's the pleasure of clothing or the pleasure of fashion or the pleasure of relations or intimacy, all these kind of things. There's places to really like be super into it, and there's places to have separation, right? And it's the dance, the nuance where spirituality lives, right? It's that mixture of your intention and your behavior together, and recognizing that we're very in-betweeners, right? Like none of us is like living on a rooftop and none of us is evil. Like really, we're all good inside and we're just doing the best that we can with the tools that we have. So last thing is just a preview of next week. We start the trait of purity. And I invite all of us to bring in and kind of think about what word we want to use for purity, tahara. And I think it's so beautiful and it's Hebrew, this idea of purity. And in English, it has such like a Catholic kind of weird like vibe. So I'm going to invite you guys to kind of think about it before next week. And any other questions, comments, thoughts about the last series and kind of going into the new week?
There was one thing that I sort of thought of as you were talking, but I don't know. Again, I've got a bit of headphone situation. I hope you can hear me. It was about the Tanya talking about that we're all Benoni.
Yes.
And I've heard that before. It doesn't resonate with me at all
Mm.
because it says in Pirkei Avot, "Ha'ameh kulam tzadikim." We're all tzadikim. And if you define a tzadik, it's not somebody who never does any mistakes. It says Sheba yipol tzadik bakum. A tzadik falls down all the time and just gets up again.
So
And I
that's
think,
not the kind of tzaddik that the Tanya is talking about. A tzaddik
yeah,
in the Tanya is somebody who has come to a situation where they have completely disassembled their evil inclination to where they no longer have it. And it says that there's a very small amount of people who are even capable of that, spiritually, even born capable of that, but that everybody is good inside, is what is Sheva Yipol Tzadik Vakum, is what he calls a Benoni, is everybody is able and given tools and is able to ask for tools to work on their intelligence, their emotions, and their actions to be in alignment with good. And that struggle is a struggle that brings even more light into the world than somebody who has just completely eradicated all desire or for anything that could be wrong. So it's not that it's not any way putting us down. It's really about, it's a different definition, a different kind of term of definition.
okay, I guess. I think maybe Moshe Rabbeinu was a tzaddik in that respect, but maybe no one else was. But I think from my perspective, and I think from most human perspective, if you got rid of the Yetzer Hara totally, then you couldn't really grow at all. So you might as well not be here. It doesn't make sense to me.
That's why it says that our Benoni's actions bring so much pleasure to God, because we are overcoming that inclination. And so that's why it's written for us. But there's just
Okay, I suppose it's just a question of definition.
exactly.
Yeah.
But I think it's a super important point that, really that all of this, like he said, if the Ramchal in the 1700s can talk about food like this, then this isn't a new, right? This is a very human issue. It's not, something that like all of a sudden happened, in our society today. It's something that's always been part of the struggle of the body and the soul working together in a sensual and physical world. And I think definitely you made an amazing point, Shulamit, about the trauma also that's been passed down through the Jewish people around food, going from abundance to scarcity, sometimes within the same generation or the same year or the same month or the same week, or this, parent to child post-Holocaust, the abundance in America, the start of the state of Israel, Corona we have a war now, like there's abundance and there's scarcity. And at the same time, there's an abundance of opportunities to be a giver. Like if you want to talk about the spirit, we're in like a spiritual abundant state of opportunities to give charity, to do acts of kindness, and to be in houses of mourning, versus be at feasts, be on luxury vacations, and like there's an abundance of opportunity to do good if we choose to take advantage of it right now, right? Or there's a scarcity of certainty, safety, and luxury, and like indulgence, at the same time. And so it's always interesting to look at it from that perspective of the wisdom that he's telling us, that even though everything is so hard right now, and the learning today is part of that. Lala, do you have something to add? No, you're just motioning. But as and there's something like, there's just so much to give right now, and there's so much of that kind of lasting pleasure available to take advantage of when we get out of the heaviness of our heart to the fact that there is so much, and we work on giving more and being there. Yeah. So on that note, we're going to end with Tehillim for all of the orphans, and look forward to seeing you guys all next week at 4:00, 9 a.m. Eastern next week. Okay. שיר המעלות אשא עיני אל ההרים מאין יבוא עזרי. עזרי מעם אדוני עושה שמיים והארץ. אל ייתן למות רגלך, אל ינום שמרך. הנה לא ינום ולא יישן שמי ישראל. אדוני שמרך, אדוני צילך, על יד ימינך, יומם השמש לא יככה וירח בלילה. הנה ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם. And thank you so much for all of you and all of your insights and your feedback. Always makes for such a great class. And I will see you guys next week.
Thank you, Lily.
And if any of you didn't see, I'm hosting a workshop Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and then Sunday at 3 p.m. Israel time, which is temporarily earlier in the United States till next week. Sunday, I guess, will be a little bit later time for you guys. And it's called Flow, and it's my 4-step kind of, workshop that I do. I haven't run it since my mom passed, so I'm excited to get back to it. And it's free, and I invite you guys to attend or to share it with anyone.
So how long is it?
It's an
each
hour,
day?
50 minutes total.
Okay, and it's at what time again?
3 p.m. Israel. I'm afraid
So
the calendar and with the clocks changing to say what time that is. Same time as today. Our class was today.
Oh, okay.
Wednesday,
It's 8.
Friday, and then it'll be an hour later on Sunday because Saturday night you guys change your clocks.
Okay, Wednesday and Friday. Okay,
Thursday and Friday. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
Thursday and Friday. Okay, great.
The group to anybody who wants to sign up to get the Zoom links. But I always love having this class with you guys, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week or on Wednesday.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.